Thanks for coming back to my channel and hanging out with me today for another live Q&A. I am Angela. I am a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and my channel is dedicated to all of you that are just getting started out in this wonderful world of voiceover, and also those of you that are veterans and have been in this industry for a while. Just come and hang out, ask some questions, share some knowledge. I'm fine with that too. This is a place where we can all kind of come together and chat about things and ask questions if you have them. So thanks for tuning in and joining me today again. And yeah, so let's get started. Oh, first, I just saw a Facebook post in one of the groups that I belong to, and it was regarding Fiverr. And apparently there was this new, I don't know if it was a scam. I'm assuming it's some sort of a scam, but I don't know for sure. But it was someone reaching out to someone through Fiverr in their inbox saying they were from the Fiverr team and that their account had been reported, and they were demanding pictures to be sent of this other seller. Now, for those of you that don't know, when if someone from Fiverr reaches out to you from actual Fiverr, or the team Fiverr, the company Fiverr, they're going to email you. They don't send you a message through your inbox on Fiverr that I know of. I've never seen anyone from Fiverr directly contact me through my inbox on Fiverr. So if this happens to you and it's something very strange, in this instance, the message itself was sort of poor English. But like I always say, if it kind of seems fishy, then definitely report it or reach out to customer service, your seller success coach, if you have one. Let them know what's going on. So if this is something that shouldn't be happening, make sure that they are aware of it so they can remove this person and keep them from doing whatever it is that they're intending on doing, if it is of ill intent. So just keep that in mind. But thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I have, excuse me, a new poll. And the poll today is, how do you keep track of your day-to-day work or tasks, right? I know time management for most of us, even if you're full-time, time management is difficult because, well, especially I guess if you're working for someone else still, because time management is a real struggle, I think, for everybody. So for me, I have gone to, which was a suggestion by my coach a few years ago, was to get a daily planner and to write everything down. So, because I have a tendency to forget things, because if you think about it, we have many, many hats that we wear running a business, and there's a lot of things to keep track of. And if you put them all in your calendar and send yourself little reminders, in 10 minutes, this is due, you might not see the bigger picture of other things that you have going on that day, just the reminder of that one thing. And it makes it a little bit easier, or harder rather, to maneuver and to move things around. And if a client reaches out to you and says, hey, I have this project, can you get it done for me? You'll have to go back to your calendar and maybe move things around. Excuse me. Whereas for me, I have my daily planner just right here in front of me on my desk. So it's at a glance. I can see what I have going on today, tomorrow, the next day, and I can move things around and make blocks of time for myself to do certain things or to write down notes. It's been super, super handy for me, and it's been really a lifesaver, I think, in running this business and keeping track of everything that goes on every day. But back to the poll. So the options were digital calendar or your mobile phone, like setting reminders in your calendar to remind you to do things. The daily planner, like I use, where you write it down with a good old, on pen and paper. There's also a CRM or a spreadsheet. I know some people who keep everything in an Excel spreadsheet and keep track of everything that way. And then also numbers as far as tracking in the same time. And then also the other option was a whiteboard in the studio. I've seen a lot of voice actors that have a whiteboard in their studio to keep track of mainly audiobooks, long form projects that need to be done in chunks on certain days. So far, it looks like 71% of you say digital calendar or a mobile phone. 24% of you say daily planner or, pen and notebook. Nobody has marked CRM spreadsheet, which is interesting. I thought there'd at least be a couple of you that really analytically minded. Analytically. It's a fun word. And then 6% of you say whiteboard in studio. I'm always afraid of doing the whiteboard in here because the space is so small. I'm afraid of reverb. So if you have a whiteboard in your studio, I'm really curious to know how that works for you. If I'm assuming it doesn't pick up any reverb because you're using it in your studio. But if you use one, let me know your experience with it, because I think in the same vein as having the planner in front of you so you can see at a glance what you're doing and what you need to do, the whiteboard would serve the same purpose. But be directly like in front of you or off to the side, and you can write down things. But I'm always afraid of reverb. But let me know what you think. All right, let's get over to the questions. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. First question is JCCAOL. I have a question for all. What was one of your favorite books for recording and one of your least favorites? It can be fiction or nonfiction. If you're looking for titles, I don't know if I feel comfortable giving you a title, but I can give you a type of book. I think for my least favorite, it was, I'm trying to not be too specific. It was a poorly written self-help book, I think was my least favorite. It was a topic that wasn't very interesting, and I had to sound like I knew what I was talking about the entire time, which made it a little bit difficult. But my favorite, I think, is actually the one I'm narrating right now. I really, really enjoy. There's witches and vampires and angels and all kinds of fun stuff. And I've always been one that's been into kind of, weird cryptid stuff. I'm one of those people. I like supernatural beings and things like that. So I'm finding it very, very enjoyable to narrate this one. But I think generally speaking, I think self-help I like the most because I'm always one that's seeking information and knowledge and research. And the more you know about how to I guess, experience or be open to the world around you and what you can and can't do, and maybe learning new skills, aren't necessarily a bad thing. So I personally like self-help, to be honest. But I'd love to hear from the rest of you. What are your favorites, your least favorites, genres, whatever. Kirk is here. Hi, Kirk. Phone at the moment for scheduling, but the plan is to get a whiteboard for the studio. That works better for me than a planner. Yeah, I don't know. I think for your space too, I would be afraid of reverb because I know that your space is on the smaller side, much like mine. I think even smaller than mine, right? So I would be, I don't know, I would be hesitant just because of the risk of reverb in the room, but I don't know. Briscoe VO says, time management is one of the more difficult challenges, especially if you are running a different small business as well. Yeah, multiple businesses, I think, would be really, really difficult to kind of evenly split your time and not forget anything. I think, again, for me, the biggest thing is remembering everything that I have to do and when it's due and where I'm supposed to be. There's just so many things to remember. And then you throw in, 50 different platforms where you are hosted for your services, and to keep track of or keep on top of all of the chats with all the different clients on all the different places, plus email, plus social media. It's a lot. And I think writing it all down is definitely going to help you keep on top of all of these different things. But yeah, for multiple businesses, my gosh, I don't know if I could do it. Sean Lester 007 says, newbie here. Hello, Sean. Welcome, welcome. How long will you record without taking a break? My challenges seem to be getting tired tongue, where I can't seem to go more than a couple sentences. When when things get blurry or your tongue is just giving up or you're getting tongue tied a lot, I think that is a good time to take a break. I think rule of thumb for me currently, I will read through maybe 2 or 3 chapters and then I'll go take a break. So, roughly, I try to get up and at least walk around every hour or so. But lately, it's been extraordinarily busy. I don't know why, but I'll take it. But it's been tough to get out of this room. I'll be sitting here for. I think the other day I sat here for 7 hours straight, and my legs absolutely hated me, and that was bad. It was a bad idea, but time just flies. When you're busy like that, time just absolutely flies by, and you lose all track of time. But it's good to get up and at least walk around, do something, get up, stretch, move your arms around, get the circulation flowing, like once an hour at the very least, I would say. But yeah, definitely taking a break is a good thing. And I'm at the point now where I will be in here, I'll set like a goal for myself. Every day I have, okay, I need to get this done. I need to get this much of this done. I need to get this much of this done today. And then I'm done. And then, a client at the last minute will say, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, can you change the pronunciation of this name or something? And I'm like, okay. So I get that done. And then, that builds on hour after hour. But I try to give myself a time limit. So I'm out of the office at this time and then I'm done for the rest of the night to have some me time, recharge, eat dinner with my family, play some video games with my son, whatever it is. You need to make time for you apart from taking the breaks too. You need to have a time where you're just out of the office. Now, I know some of the websites that we're on require us to answer messages quickly from clients, and I understand that. And that is not such a big deal. But being out of the office, out of the studio for a certain amount of time every night is going to save you mentally, and not because if you're in here hour after hour, day after day after day, that's you're running the risk of burning yourself out prematurely, and you don't want to do that. So definitely take breaks, get up, stretch, grab some coffee, and then at a certain time of night, call it a night. You're done, right? Because I think that is the only way that I'm making it work without losing my mind or getting burnt out, which would be bad because this is what I do full time. But your body will tell you, and that comes with blurry eyes or tired tongue, for sure. And then he continues on to say, or mindlessly reading before realizing that I have turned into an announcer. Yeah, if things start to get a little monotone and you're just losing that verve, then it's time to take a break. Briscoe VO says, what is your noise floor and how many hours a day can you record? My noise floor, I think without processing, I just checked it the other day. It's 64, negative 60, no, negative 64, I think. No. God, what was it? I literally had just checked it. I think it's around that, I think. I think at the highest, maybe negative 56. I think at the highest, but most of the time, unprocessed, I'm around negative 64, I think. But how many hours a day can I record? I try to spend half my day at most recording. So maybe 4-5 hours, maybe at the most. Otherwise, you start to get gravelly and just dry, and you don't want to burn this out, this instrument, because this is where we make our money. So I think I give myself about 4 or 5 hours a day where I'm actually narrating, recording something, and then the remainder of the day I'm spending editing, returning emails, that sort of thing. I'm trying to not push my voice as much as possible because you could definitely hear the difference after long sessions of narrating. I know there are some other audiobook narrators that can go hours and hours and hours in narrating, but I can't. I tend to just give myself 4 or 5 hours, I think, And then, so that is another reason why I try to break projects into smaller chunks and span them out over a couple of days if I can. Um, and that also allows time for rush projects. If I have a repeat client that comes in and says, hey, I have this big old PowerPoint that I need done, but I need it done within 2 days, and it would normally take me maybe a week, maybe 5 days, then, having only that much time narrating will save your voice for emergency projects, which I've had happen. So that's kind of where I try to keep the limit. It's about 4 or 5 hours a day, I think. Booker Mo, hello, says, hi, Angela. Newbie here, and have been building out my voice room and getting items together. Once I'm ready, is using LibriVox a good place to start? Any other suggestions would be great. That's how I started, was with LibriVox and practicing where to pause and take a breath while you're narrating, to get used to breathing techniques while you're narrating, to get used to long form narrating. But more importantly for me, LibriVox was instrumental in me learning my DAW and learning how to format for audiobook production. It was a hard and fast lesson in learning how to manipulate all the effects and settings and, to get to the proper formatting for audiobook narration. So LibriVox for me was a good place to start. I recommend it. If you're not ready, because, in the beginning, we're just not ready to start charging people for our lack of experience, as I thought of it. So once I was ready, then I hopped on to ACX and I started to submit samples, and then I got my first book offer. So LibriVox really helped me be ready. So yes, I would recommend it. But learning your DAW, I think, is instrumental. Whichever one you choose, I of course recommend Adobe Audition, but whatever DAW works for you, whichever one appeals to you and seems to make the most sense, because most of them have free trials, so you can check one out and see if it's right for you, if it makes sense, if it's easy to use, and then learn it. Because knowing what your DAW can and can't do and how you can do it, going through the processes and, learning everything about your DAW, I think is going to be huge for you going forward, period. So I think those would be probably the best recommendations. Lost my spot. There. Tony. Hey, Tony. He says, have you ever had to take acting lessons? And if so, did you find it beneficial? I did not necessarily acting lessons, but I did have a coach for about a year. I had Anthony Pica coach me, and he was a theater teacher. So it wasn't acting lessons per se, but there was some acting boot camp, I guess, within that coaching for a year that I had with him. And it was beneficial to really get down to understanding the character and script interpretation and what's the word I'm looking for? To really perform what is written, how it should be perceived. I'm trying to figure out the best way to word it, but I think you know what I mean. To be the character that is in the script, to emote, there's these weird noises outside. Sorry, guys. But yeah, training or acting lessons are definitely beneficial. Sorry. Zoned out for a minute. I think it's time for coffee. All right, Kirk. Kirk says, favorite horror. Me too. I love horror. It's one of my favorites. I read a lot of my personal books are horror. I read a lot of horror. I think you said even the one even the one it got cut off there, but even the one that you did not too long ago, I would think. Um, Blumenthal Francione, how did you get started in VO? Because I'm trying to get started myself. I got started with audiobooks. I started with, like I was just mentioning, with LibriVox, and then I got onto ACX and I narrated a couple of audiobooks. And then I found Fiverr, and then I found Upwork, and then I found voices.com, and then I started to branch out to more and more and more different voiceover websites. But I started on LibriVox and ACX, mainly narrating audiobooks. I do offer audiobook narration on the other sites as well. And to be honest, most of my audiobook work comes from Fiverr these days. And I would say some from Upwork and some from direct contact from authors who reach out to me directly from website or social media. So, audiobooks is how I got started. And then someone had reached out to me on Fiverr through my audiobook gig and asked me to do some other type of narration. I think it was character work of some sort. And I was like, I can do that. And then I got reached out. Another client had reached out to me and said, hey, can you record my phone greeting? And I said, sure, I can do that. And then I discovered how to do that. And then it just kind of goes on from there. And you discover that you can do not only audiobooks, but e-learning, documentaries, phone messages, YouTube channel narration. I mean, everything that you can think of with a voice commercial, voice actors can do. So it kind of just started with audiobooks and just sort of branched out from there. But knowing more than one skill, or being comfortable performing one skill or doing one skill is definitely going to be beneficial in growing your business. And not only in with your voice, but technically speaking, if you learn how to work with videos in creating them, editing them, adding your voiceover to them, all of those things will definitely be beneficial in propelling your career forward as well, because you become a one-stop shop. The client doesn't have to get your voice and then go find another freelancer to finish the video by adding your voice to it and maybe some transitions in and out, that sort of thing. They can give that all to you. So that client is doesn't have to go shop around for someone else. You're kind of a one-stop shop, which makes you more valuable in your client's eyes, I think. It's worked for me. Just say that. Brenda's here. Hi, Brenda. Brenda Nelson says, best ways to ensure I'm not narrating a scam project. In terms of, I'm assuming you're talking about maybe ACX or, well, really anywhere, because there's scammers will try to get us anywhere we go. I would say ask questions. I think follow your gut and your intuition. If it's starting to sound like it's fishy, if there's a lot of variables, so I can't give you specifics because situations are different. They try to approach different ways with different types of projects, that sort of thing. But ask questions. If it seems fishy, then it might be. I think there's been a few times where I couldn't quite tell, but my gut said no. So I said, no, thank you, but I'll have to pass on this project. And that was on Fiverr. So then I blocked them after that so they couldn't just place an order. And I had another instance where my gut said, this is fishy, but I didn't block them and say, no, thank you. Actually, no, I did say no, thank you, but I didn't block them. And then they placed an order. And then it turned out to be a big fiasco. So it's hard to tell, but I would say trust your gut. Trust your intuition. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's more than likely a duck. But I'm sad to say that a lot of it just comes from trial and error and learning how different people approach you in different places for different things. So unfortunately, there's not really an easy, hard and fast like differentiation between who is a scammer and how they approach you, because there's just so many different variables there. But for ACX in particular, there is Audiobook Scout and ACX Author Snoop through Audiobook Scout that help you kind of deep dive a little bit into the different users of ACX to see if they have more than one book up for audition, if they have any completed projects, if the name on the completed projects matches the name of the person reaching out to you. So, for instance, there's a few different ways that way to see if there are more questions that need to be asked to determine whether or not it is in fact a scammer or a real legit rights holder. So I guess it depends on what it is that we're talking about specifically, but sometimes it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell if it's a scam, but trust your gut. I think in the end, it's served me well. Kurt came back, said, oops. Horror genre, even the anthology that I struggled with. In the end, I'm really happy with. No, least, I like it all. Spoken like a true audiobook narrator. Yeah, that anthology you narrated was very interesting. JCCAOL says, the book you are currently recording sounds awesome. For me, fiction would probably be historical fiction or gothic horror. Nonfiction, probably science and books on logic. Yeah, totally. I really enjoy books that are I like historical fiction too and gothic horror. I really enjoy those too. There's there's not a whole lot of books that I've come across that I didn't enjoy. I think if it's poorly written or if it seems like I should say if it seems like it may be translated from another language without being seen by a proper editor, I think those are the ones that are the hardest to get through. But there really hasn't been a book that I really didn't enjoy one way or the other, apart from that one that was just a topic that I just could not wrap my head around. And it was really, really difficult to get through. But I got through it, I got it done, and the client was happy. So in the end, that's all that really matters. Tony says, oh, geez, I lost my place. He didn't say that. I said that. Hold on. Oh, my gosh. Oh, there he is. Okay. Tony says, Angela, what would you recommend as a good resource to learn how to use Adobe Audition for VO work? Did you do a course in Audition or did you learn through trial and error? Adobe Audition, there's actually a ton of tutorials through Adobe's own the Creative Cloud website. They have a lot of tutorials there that walk you through everything and how to use it. There's a lot of information on Adobe Audition on YouTube. And then I also came across Tim Tippett, who is a audio engineer ninja / VO, who knows Adobe Audition inside and out. And he has a course on Adobe Audition, which is called Audition Ready. And you can find that on his website, which is votechguru.com. And it is an excellent course if you want to know the ins and outs of Adobe Audition and not only how to use it, but what everything means. So he actually goes through and explains the parametric equalizer and, the differences of highs and lows and mids and all of that stuff. It was really, really interesting, really, really helpful to understand how to manipulate it on my end. So I understood what I was doing versus just following someone else going through the motions, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of information out there on Adobe Audition, and it does take a little trial and error, but once you figure it out, it's awesome. I'm really, really happy with Adobe Audition. Amanda Panda says, do you use Reaper? No, I use Adobe Audition, actually. I have heard quite a few people do use Reaper or what was the other one? Studio One. There's a lot of people that use those two and are very happy with it. I personally use Adobe Audition because most of the people I followed in the beginning used Adobe Audition. So my learning process was much easier to take what they were saying and translate it to my own DAW versus having to try to figure out, what effects could do what they were doing that were in their DAW but not in my DAW, if that makes sense. So it was just a decision that I made for myself. But once I did, I originally started with Audacity, and then I found Adobe Audition, and I never looked back. I thought Adobe Audition it just made sense to me. It clicked for me. So I think that is what you have to do, because you have to learn your DAW. You have to know how to use it, and it has to make sense for you. So whichever one you choose, learn it, know it, love it, and you will be just fine. Um, Trisha Kramer, I think I need to put my eyeballs on, says, just starting out, need advice on recording levels as normalizing to -3 dB blows out my audio. Any simple mistakes to look for? If normalizing to -3 dB blows out your audio, I would say your input gain is too high. So you might want to crank it down a little bit. I think for me, my recording levels raw, like recording an audiobook straight into my DAW before I do anything else, is around -12. You want to, if your DAW has a volume limiter on it that's got colors, blue, yellow, and red, your input as you're recording should only be like somewhere just kind of kissing into the yellow. It shouldn't be in the red at all. But usually it's about -12 for me is where my voice is going in. Well, -15 to -12, maybe. I think -12 would be on the high side. But that's roughly about where it should fall, because then after you process it with your effects chain or your effects rack, and then normalize it to -3 dB, then you should sound just fine. But if you're higher than that, then that, of course, is going to just blow out your audio. So I would say to turn down your input gain a little bit. And that could be coming from your interface or from your mic volume knob. So I would just crank that down a little bit and try it again. It could be it. Tony says, yes, you got to take an ergo break. Sitting down for long periods is really bad for the cardiovascular system. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I have to make myself get up and move around sometimes because I hit that panic button way too often and go, oh my God, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And I just start panicking. So then I make myself sit here for hours and get a bunch of work done. But ultimately, that's just bad. That's just bad for you. But you got to get up and stretch, move around, do something. I luckily have a bunch of stairs in my house, so I can say, okay, in 20 minutes, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to my room, which is on the 3rd floor, and just so I can go and stretch and walk up some stairs, even though I don't really need anything up there, but I tell myself that I do, so I have to go up there. But yeah, you do need to take breaks. Tone Chaser says, I have to take a break to breathe. I think I over-insulated my booth and closet. I get about a half hour of good air. Yeah, I think the same goes for me sometimes, and I have the door closed and I'm in here for long periods of time narrating. You need to refresh your air in the room. Otherwise, you're just breathing in the same, air that doesn't have any fresh oxygen in it. So it could probably be good or bad for you as well. So getting out, opening your door, having a stretch, having a nice deep breathe, maybe even do some breathing exercises so you can kind of refresh your whole system while you're at it. It'll probably be a good thing. JCCAOL is replying to Tony, says, I have seen videos on her YouTube channel where she goes over audition. Bill DeWeese has some great videos too. Yeah, there's a lot of great voiceover artists who use Adobe Audition. Bill DeWeese is one. Anthony Pica is another. There was another one just right on the edge of, I think Earl Hall had even used Adobe Audition. There's another one right on the edge of my tongue, but maybe I'll remember it as soon as we move on to another question. But Adobe Audition has been great. Oh, Tim Tippett, of course, uses Adobe Audition. But there's a lot of voice actors on YouTube that have great videos on Adobe Audition for all different kind of aspects. So just take a look around YouTube. You'll find some great stuff. Tony says -60 IE versus good or is good. You kind of lost me on that one. I'm not sure what that means. Ivy Alice 09 says, I have a visual disability and am legally blind. Is there anyone or anything you might recommend looking into? I have the equipment and want to jump in. Just nervous of my vision affecting my work. That's a great question, and I'm afraid I don't really know the answer to that. I have to think about that and get back to you. I'm sure there's got to be some way but I am not familiar with it. But I'm sure there has to be some way to do it without having to need to see. Um, Let me get back to you on that one, Alice. I'm not exactly sure. Tony says, oh, he's replying to JCC AOL. He says, cheers. JCC AOL says, Tony, you're very welcome. I love you guys. You guys are the best. Nick Hatton is here. Oh, geez, it just jumped up. What happened? I lost you. Oh, there you go. Hi, I'm a broadcast journalist working on national radio in the UK, looking to branch out into VO. What's the one tip you'd give me for someone who has the broadcasting experience but no VO? I've worked with a lot of people in your position, coming out of radio, coming into voiceover, and you already have the advantage of knowing most of the lingo. You've probably done some, 30-second spots and things like that of your own. But I don't know if you have the editing experience, but I would say learning your DAW and perfecting your own home studio would be most beneficial. You already have the know-how, right? But doing it on your own without the use of facilities or other people to edit would be most beneficial, I think, for you. So honing or perfecting your own home studio, I think, would be most beneficial for you now. And then also learning your DAW. If you didn't do any of the editing or producing yourself, learning your DAW, I think, would be great. But you already have the voiceover part mostly down in terms of lingo and what everything means, and perhaps maybe even where to find the work. If not, I have a great bunch of videos here on my channel that will show you how to find some work. But I think for you, producing it on your own, I think learning how to do that, I think would be probably the most beneficial for you and your position. That's what I'm coming to find, mostly from the people that I work with. If I think of something else, I'll definitely throw that in here. One Redeemed says, when we record demos from public domain books, where are we able to legally upload the content? Can we upload on social media, Fiverr, or our own website? Or would we need special permission? If the books are in public domain, they have no active copyright on them. So you are free to do with them whatever you want. So if you're just recording those, small little demo samples, you're free to use those wherever you like. There's no, to my knowledge, there's no issue with that at all because there is no current copyright on them. Colin Clark says, hello, finally made it to it live. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Briscoe VO says, I'm doing a book of ghost stories with no characters, only tales and fables. How do you keep it from being monotone when there is very little points to add excitement in your read? Ghost stories, I think a lot of keeping it engaging is going to come from just your tone and maybe inflection, maybe not so much excitement, unless there's like screaming and, excited sort of conversations going on. But ghost stories are meant to be probably closer to being monotone because you're trying to keep the drama and build the suspense until there's like some sort of a climactic kind of event. But in my own head, I would probably read it close to that same way, but maybe a little bit more dramatic. There's not going to be a ton of inflection, so it's going to sound probably pretty close to monotone, but not extremely monotone. I think getting up and taking a break when I start to sound too monotone in my own head is a good opportunity, to go and take a break and then kind of break that up a little bit, take a break, reset, pause, and then come back to it. And then at that time, I think I kind of find my groove and get back into it. I'm not as monotone. So those are tough, but I think they are going to be closer to monotone for ghost stories, because you're setting that kind of tone. I hope that makes sense. Personal opinion anyway. Padrika Gray is here. Hello, Padrika. She says, hello, Angela. First audiobook done, ACX approved, file uploads. The author paid me, but email said there is another ACX Audible review. Question, if ACX and author already approved, what's the second review about? That is a great question. I don't know. The email says there is another ACX Audible review. I'm not sure. I've never had that situation arise where ACX needs to review the file standards again, or I'm not exactly sure. I've never heard that before, so I'm not exactly sure. If that were me, I would reach out to ACX and ask them. I would email them back and say, what exactly does this mean? Doesn't really make any sense. Rustic Hillbilly says, you were a real quack up. I am a quack, perhaps. Thanks for joining today. I'm glad you're here. Tone Chaser says, I had a scammer this past week. My first week on Fiverr wanted to hire me outside Fiverr to sign checks and drop them in FedEx and UPS drop boxes. The profile was gone next day. I'm telling you, people will try anything. Anytime you make yourself available online, people are going to try to take advantage of that. But I'm glad that they were reported and removed. Lindsay11, hello, says, hi, Angela. Was wondering if you had any recommendations for editing software for VO. I'm putting together a great home studio and have only outsourced editing. Am green in this area and need something user-friendly. Adobe Audition. There is also Audacity if you want to get your feet wet. Audacity is free to use and download. Adobe Audition is a paid subscription DAW or DAW, but to me, it's worth it. I think, don't quote me on how much it is right now, but for Adobe Audition alone, I think it's like $25 a month, roughly. But there is, having the Creative Cloud, the Adobe Audition CC is the live subscription version, but it's constantly being updated with new effects, new features, and things of that nature. So it's constantly being updated and improved. And to me, it makes the most sense for a voice actor because, again, personal opinion, and don't hate on me if you use a different DAW, that's fine. But to me, it almost seems like other DAWs are a little bit more focused on music production, and Adobe Audition has a lot more voiceover features. Again, personal opinion. I know some people are very, they love their DAWs, and that's fine. But Adobe Audition for me is what I would recommend for anyone starting voiceover. Let's see. Lindsay11 says, oh, well, you just answered my you just answered my question. You're welcome. Ivy Alice 09 says, historical fiction recommendation. Archduke Franz Ferdinand lives. A historical explanation of what would have happened if he wasn't assassinated. So WW1 and 2 never happened, and the ripple effects. That does sound interesting. I'm going to have to write that one down. Lives. Thank you for that. I have to look that one up. Brett Gray says, just joined your voiceover group on Facebook. I'm really interested in receiving some feedback on my first commercial demo. Brand new to this. I'm really good at not knowing what I'm doing right now. Same. I don't know of anyone that is just starting out with something new that knows everything about everything. You just don't. We all started at zero, right? We all learned. We all came up from nothing. Completely relatable. So I would say for you, watch a lot of YouTube channels, not only my own, but there's also Anthony Pica, there's Booth Junkie, there's Tim Tippett's, there's quite a few YouTube channels out there that are very, very informative and great group of people. The Gift of Gab, which is Gabby Nistico, I know that I'm going to think of another one, but there's a lot of us out there that have YouTube channels that just share information, and there's just so much to learn from these people. Podcasts as well. There's a lot of podcasts out there with great information. Um, there's VO Peeps, there's Mission Audition, there's tons of them. So just learn all that you can and soak it all in, and hopefully stick with us and learn a little bit from the Facebook group. There's a lot of Facebook groups too to learn from. And the voiceover community is one of the most loving and supportive and helpful communities I have ever been privileged to be part of. So you won't find anyone that isn't available to you to help and support you as you grow in your career. So welcome to the family, and I hope you find some great information in all the places that I just mentioned. I did anyway. Matthias R says, good morning, Angela. Good morning. I am a little stuck with putting some samples on Fiverr to start somewhere. Are you having difficulty with getting the samples onto Fiverr? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. But that is a great way to start. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Posting those samples on Fiverr is, better than just sitting back and not. So that's great. That's great that you did that. But I'm not exactly sure if that's what you mean. If you mean that you're stuck, or that you can't put them on Fiverr, or if that's all that you've done so far. I'm not entirely sure. Brett says, by the way, I'm also a traditional visual artist. My subject matter is supernatural creatures and horror, so based on some of the discussion here today, I feel I'm among kindred spirits. Yes, you are, Brett. Yes, you are. There's a lot of horror fans here. Oh my goodness, so many questions today. Hold on, I'm losing my place. One Redeemed says, thank you for answering my question, remaining domain books. Looking forward to it. Good, I'm glad. Jedi Dick Sensei says, you're a beautiful spirit. Fly free and know that love follows you. Well, thank you. Oh, really quick. Let's go back over to the poll, which was, how do you keep track of your day-to-day work or tasks? We have 35 votes. 57% of you say digital calendar, mobile phone. 34% of you say daily planner, pen and notebook. And 9% of you say whiteboard in studio. Actually, that is surprising. I thought there'd be more of you with whiteboard in studio. I don't know. I kind of want to do the whiteboard in studio, but I'm nervous about reverb. So I'd be interested to hear if, well, obviously you're not experiencing reverb, otherwise you wouldn't be using it that way, but be interesting to hear what your takes are on that. Gosh, what is wrong with my mouth today? Matthias says, I put some short commercial samples, but I wanted to do some e-learning too. Where can I find proper example script in order to display my range? Second, should I make a video presenting myself? Yes, if you want to do e-learning, I would say making your own explainer videos would be beneficial, and putting them on YouTube, taking little snippets, shorts, something, little short videos, and putting those on Instagram, putting those TikTok, anywhere where social media is found, because you want to present yourself doing that sort of work that you want to do. And in terms of finding scripts for those, I think for me, the most beneficial place for me was YouTube. If you find a video on YouTube, losing my voice, and you click on the little ellipses to the right of the video, just under the video to the right, sometimes there'll be a transcript. So if you click on that and you find there's a transcript there, you can take the verbiage and change it up a little bit so you're not just straight plagiarizing, and use that as a script to make an explainer video, or take something in your own space, it's something in your own studio or in your own house, like how to use a pen. I know it's simple, but you get my meaning. Just make your own explainer video on how you do something. Or if it's another skill that you have, you can make an explainer video on how to do that. You don't even necessarily have to film yourself. You can just explain it in the video and maybe have um, like a PowerPoint type of slide change, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then slide change, step 4, you know what I mean? Something like that. Just get creative and think outside the box. There's, a few different ways that you can do that, but I would say definitely showcase what you can do, what you want to do, and then share that on social media platforms and on your website, and make it a part of a demo or like a video demo for Fiverr, for Upwork, for any place where you can post a video demo to show that you can, in fact, do this type of voiceover work. So I think that's a very smart approach, and I would definitely recommend doing that. Pamela's here. Hi, Pamela. She says, hi, Angela. Missed you and the Thursday night group. Should be back this Thursday. Can't wait. As always, great information. Well, we missed you too. We'll be looking forward to seeing you this week. And thank you. Thank you for joining today. Briscoe Vio says, great advice. Thank you, Angela. You're welcome. Trisha Kramer says, what's an acceptable noise floor for pre-effect to get negative 15 dB input vocals? How flexible are ACX edited noise floor requirements under negative 60 dB? Thanks for all this mentorship. An acceptable noise floor pre-effect. That's a tough one, because if you're adjusting your gain, your input gain, to get to about negative 15 dB raw without any effects, you're also increasing the probability that your noise floor is going to be higher as well. So having a good effect chain, like a noise reducer, if that is the case, like NS1 from Waves, or if you have Adobe Audition, they have a denoise and a few other noise reducer effects that you can use. But ultimately, if you're adjusting that volume to get to a negative 15 dB input, again, that noise floor is going to be higher as well. So having a good way to remove that noise is going to be crucial for you to reach that negative 60 dB peak for noise floor. And I say peak because your noise floor cannot be any higher than negative 60 dB. So you want to stay finished after all the effects are done, after your normalization is done. The end result, noise floor, should be somewhere between negative 70 and negative 60, perhaps. You don't want complete silence, because that, if you just insert silence and cheat, ACX is going to say your noise floor is too low. They don't want complete silence. They do want room tone, as long as it's no louder than negative 60 dB. So I find somewhere usually around negative 70 and negative 60 is usually acceptable to ACX as a acceptable noise floor. I hope that answers your question. I was really trying not to go off on multiple tangents. Zerufiel says, hi, Angela. How do you treat a living room? How do you treat a living room on a budget? I record in my living room and there is too much echo, I'm assuming. I would definitely not record in your living room as a living room. You might have to build what, I'm thinking of Anthony Pica right now, because he had the same situation. If you go to a VO's Journey, the YouTube channel, a VO's Journey, if you're not familiar with Anthony Pica already, in the very beginning of his journey in voiceover, he created what he called a hobo fort. He took PVC pipe, made a skeleton, and then draped it in moving blankets or blankets to make yourself kind of like a little cocoon that you could record inside of, which reduces your echo and kind of muffles outside noises. It's not going to be completely soundproof, but it will help to reduce the echo that your microphone also picks up. Because being in a big wide room like that, you're going to have ambient noise. You're going to have like this big airy boxiness sound. You're going to have echo. You're going to have all of the noise that you don't want in your recording. So making yourself like a little booth or some sort of a enclosure was the word I was looking for. Some sort of kind of an enclosure to kind of reduce the outside noise and to keep the echo down, I think would be beneficial for you. But definitely check out A VO's Journey. YouTube channel. And also he has a podcast and a website and a few other things. But I think he also has on there more information on how he built his hobo fort, which would be interesting. Plus, I think there are a few other YouTube videos from other channels as well on the subject. So that is typically what is done in a room like that. Pamela says, I had read a place in ACX training that said, even though approved, it doesn't mean they won't look into it further for final approval. Interesting. I've never had that come up. I'm assuming you're referring to the second review. I've never heard that come up before. And I've done close to 100 audiobooks now, and I don't recall any of my clients saying that, or any of the ones that I did directly through ACX saying that. But that would be interesting. I wonder what it is that they're actually looking for specifically. Shannon Franklin says, waves and virtual hand waving. Hi. That's funny. Oh, gosh. I lost my place again. Okay, Padrika Gray says, okay, we'll email them. The congratulatory audiobook approval email is a canned format. So maybe it's a standard wording formality with ACX responses. It could very well be. And like what Pamela was saying, maybe it is just a generic response saying, hey, you're not quite done yet. Maybe they do that like randomly, just to double check their software, to spot check that, make sure that everything is correct. I'm not sure. Interesting. Colin says, I used quilts and blankets with fabric to tent one corner of my living room off from the rest, ceiling included. Yeah, don't forget the ceiling. Your ceiling, the walls around you, hardwood floors beneath you, whatever stand or desk that you're using also will reflect and produce an echo. So whatever hard surfaces you have around you, keep in mind that they will reflect your voice and cause echo. So don't ever not think about the ceiling or floor too in your hobo fort. Good point, Colin. Shannon says, website wisdom needed. Would you add a vlog or blog that really has nothing to do with VO, but showcases editing and VO skills that you can do with your own personal stuff? If you were saying a vlog or a blog that has, yes, if you're using your voice, if you're narrating, if it's a vlog, I guess you would be. If you're narrating a blog, or you have like an audio visual type of a read where you're narrating copy, I wouldn't think that would be a bad thing either, because you're still showcasing your sound and how well you're saying you're editing. Showcase your editing and VO skills. And yes, anything that you can narrate and showcase your voice and your style, I definitely think is a good thing. And if you take into account all of the voice actors and audiobook narrators that are on social media and doing little videos, like primarily on TikTok right now. TikTok is huge for audiobook narrators because there's a lot of authors on TikTok and on all these different social media platforms that are finding their audiobook narrators through these same platforms. So any way to showcase your voice and your skills is definitely not a bad thing. And using some of your own personal stuff is, I think, even better. Colin says, he's answering Zerufiel. He says, stapled to walls and ceiling around and above my blanketed desk. It works. I don't know if I would staple personally. I'd be too worried about the holes in the walls. But I guess at the end of the day, you got to make your studio work one way or the other. There's holes all over in here. It's a good thing I don't rent this place. But I'm going to have a lot of patchwork to do when I move for sure. JCCAOL says, always responding to Ivy Alice. Great recommendation. I read quite a bit of alternate history. I am writing a book that takes place in an alternate timeline as well. Ooh, interesting. I like that idea. Alternate timelines. Brandon Catanzariti? Catanzariti. Did I pronounce that right? Catanzariti. What mouse trackball do you use with Audition? I feel like my MacBook trackpad is slowing me down. I use a fixed trackball mouse. Let me see if I can actually show you. Let me look at my monitor here so you can actually see it. Can you see it? Yeah, it's a Logitech trackball mouse. So I've got, instead of moving the mouse around on a mouse pad, it's stationary. And I just manipulate the cursor with my thumb on the trackball. And for me, I found it beneficial in editing video and for audio because I can just move it around quickly with the flick of the thumb. Plus, I have arthritis in my wrist. I broke it when I was 12. It didn't heal right. So now I have, a weak wrist. So moving my thumb around is a little bit easier for me than moving my wrist around, basically. So it works better for me and for a couple of different reasons. Padrika says, I've become an expert with Audacity, but I actually don't love it. It's just free. I hear you, girl. LOL. Didn't you say you have a course or support group for those who want to learn Audition? I don't have a course or a support group solely for Audition. Tim Tippett is who I typically recommend people to seek out for Audition course and learning Audition. But I do a lot of tutorials and answer a lot of questions and show how to do what I know in Audition in my groups, in my Facebook group and in my Platinum group on my website, where we have weekly meetings and things of that nature. If something comes up regarding a question about Audition or something that we can do in Audition, then I'll usually show that in those groups. Or here on YouTube, I have a few tutorials on how to use Adobe Audition here on my channel as well. But I don't have a course per se for Audition, but I do share a lot of information, mainly here on YouTube, about Audition. But I started with Audacity as well because it was free. But it just seems that Adobe Audition for me seems a little bit more intuitive. It seems a little easier to use for me. Zerufiel says, saying thank you to Colin. Colin says, you're welcome. Tony says, thank you for all your help and advice, Angela. You were very generous with your time, so hats off to you. Well, if I had a hat on, I would take it off to you too, my friend. Thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness, we are just over an hour. Okay, let's try to wrap this up really quick because I don't want YouTube to cut us off. Okay, so back up to the poll really quick. 36 votes. We have 58% of you say digital calendar or mobile phone. Hats off to you guys. I couldn't keep up with that. I tried it. It didn't work for me. But if you guys can make it work, then that's great. Daily planner, 33%, and 8% of you now say whiteboard and studio. Interesting. I would love to do that, but I'm so afraid of reverb. Padrika Gray says, last question. Do you know whether the NS1 plugin works with Audacity? Last I heard, yes, but Audacity, let me just back up and say, not every DAW works with every plugin. So no matter the plugin that you're looking at, I would definitely do a little research to make sure that your DAW will support it. But specifically NS1 and Audacity, last I heard they do, but please double check me before you purchase NS1. And that goes for any DAW. Again, not every plugin is compatible with every DAW. So please make sure that it'll work with your DAW before you purchase it. Zerufiel says, thank you. You're welcome. Colin Clark says, yep, lots of holes to fill in if I move. Yeah, I'm afraid to take down everything in here, but it's not anything spackle and paint can't fix, right? No big deal. Brandon says, as I tell most folks that try to say my last name, I'm so sorry. Close enough. I know my last name isn't Smith either, so I have to spell it out most of the time, but I'm glad I got close enough anyway. One other question. What sort of vocal exercises do you do prior to recording? I don't do enough, admittedly, but I will do tongue twisters. I'll drink a lot of water, have something hot. Now, I know you're not supposed to drink coffee before you record, but I can't live without it. I'm sorry. I have to have coffee. It does make for a little sticky mouth, but I have to have it. If I don't have coffee, then I just go into crazy rages. So I try to warm up with something warm to drink first, and then I'll do some kind of like tongue twisters. I'll stretch the muscles of my face, you know, stretch your jaw and your face muscles and that sort of thing. But I won't record like very first thing. I have to get, you have to get that morning out, right? First before you start. So definitely do some vocal exercises or just maybe nursery rhymes, tongue twisters, something to get your tongue also to wake up. Mine apparently is still not awake yet because I'm having difficulty speaking today, getting lazy tongue. But definitely do some exercises, drink a lot of water, have tea or coffee if you have to, because I do. M. Todd Coyne says, I seem to hear your voice everywhere. Was watching a documentary the other day and swore it was you. Stop it. I want to be, you know who I absolutely love? I want to be Sigourney Weaver. I love her voice in documentaries and like, the like Animal Planet sort of stuff. Oh my God, that's who I aspire to be. Sigourney Weaver's voice. That's what I want. So I hope one day to be in that place. But thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. Enterprise voiceover. Hello, Eric. How are you? Thank you for joining. Kirk says, Eric. Hello, hello. Lots of love in this room. Padrika Gray says, thank you for all your wisdom. I don't know if it's wisdom, but I'll tell you what I know or what I found out for sure. Eric says, Kirk. Shannon says, Shannon. Oh, wait. You guys are awesome. Okay. Eric says, I don't know. Sometimes that early morning voice is good and gravelly. Yes, but it also depends on what you're narrating. If you're narrating something juicy, perhaps, maybe gravelly and low would be good. But I think for most of what we do, probably not. I guess it depends. Brandon says, switch to tea. I know. I have so many options too when it comes to tea. I've got at least 5 or 6 different options for tea. I've got, powdered matcha. I've got that, what is that called? Oh my God, I can never remember what it's called. The butterfly pea flower tea, just the raw flowers, or they're dehydrated, they're dried, right? And then you just infuse that with water. And then I have a few other types of tea as well. Throat coat, of course, I have that as well. But I don't know, coffee's like my thing. I can't not have it. It's tough. I know, it's a struggle. He also says, recently discovered your channel and absolutely love the vids. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm considering joining your Platinum crew. Have a great day. Well, we'd love to have you, Brandon. We have a lot of fun. The Platinum group, let me just do a little plug here. The 2 guys in the group yelling at each other, Kirk and Eric, they're in my group as well. We've all become a pretty tight-knit group of friends, I think. We are very supportive of each other. It's there's about 30 of us in the group, and there's a good portion of us that join every week, and we just talk about whatever's going on, our successes, our failures, when we need, socials, if we need some support, we're there for each other. We have some laughs. I do tutorials. They ask questions. I try to answer them as best I can. I had Anthony Pica on there the other day as a guest host for the group, and it was great. But it's very, very casual. We bring a drink, ask some questions, have some laughs. It's great. It's a great group, I think. You guys are the best, really. Eric says, Brandon, you should join the group. It's a really valuable asset, and there's a lot of knowledge in there. And we do have a lot of fun, too. Lots of fun, which I think is important. And Kirk says, yay, coffee. Yay, coffee. Cheers, my friend. All right. So I think we'll do one last check of the poll. Word escaped me for a minute. All right. So, how do you keep track of your day to day work and tasks? And 55% of you say digital calendar, mobile phone. 32% say daily planner. Still nobody for CRM and spreadsheet. And then, 12% of you said whiteboard in studio. Interesting. Cool beans. Okay, well, I think we're going to end today's Q&A here, although we just had another reply. Brandon says, that's awesome. Thanks, Eric, if that's your real name. It is. It is. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining today. I really appreciate everybody participating and saying hi and asking questions. And you guys are the best. And I wish you the best. And everybody have a fantastic or a fantastic week, I guess, if it applies. And I will see everybody next week.